Welcome back to 8-Minute Masterpieces, the channel where we break down the world's greatest literary works in under 8 minutes. Today, we dive into Fyodor Dostoevsky's philosophical and psychological novel, Notes from Underground. If you're intrigued by complex characters and the deep dive into the human psyche, this one's for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on more literary masterpieces. Now, let's go underground. We begin with the underground man, the nameless narrator who offers a chilling and raw confession. He tells us that he's a bitter, isolated, and spiteful man. Living in 19th century St. Petersburg, he feels disconnected from society, fueled by resentment and a sense of superiority. The underground isn't just a metaphor for isolation, it's the narrator's mental state. He admits that he's excessively self-conscious, aware of his own contradictions, and incapable of action. He rejects rationalism, the idea that humans act in their best interests, and embraces irrationality as the only true freedom. The underground man's confession is divided into two parts. The first being a monologue where he examines his inner turmoil. Here, we see a man tortured by his own intellect. He despises those around him, whom he deems ordinary, yet he cannot escape his yearning for connection. This is where the theme of alienation first emerges. He simultaneously craves and despises human contact. His inability to reconcile these feelings leads him to retreat into his underground existence, where he nurtures his spite. His philosophical musings present a critique of 19th century Russian society, particularly the emerging rationalist and utilitarian thinking. He views this as dehumanizing, reducing people to mere numbers. Instead, the underground man argues for the unpredictability of human nature, highlighting the chaos and irrationality that defines human existence. His confession lays the groundwork for what is to come, a deeper exploration of his interactions with the world and his tortured inner life. The underground man continues his diatribe against society. He introduces us to his theory of conscious inertia, the idea that overthinking paralyzes him, preventing him from engaging with the world. He knows what is good or right, but his hyper-awareness of the absurdity of life and human nature stops him from acting on that knowledge. He's locked in a mental prison of inaction. In this section, Dostoevsky explores existential themes, anticipating the works of later thinkers like Nietzsche and Sartre. The underground man's rejection of society is also a rejection of himself. He's aware that his suffering is self-inflicted, yet he seems to revel in it. He scorns people who live simple, straightforward lives, but he's envious of their ability to exist without the burden of excessive introspection. He takes particular aim at the man of action, someone who can participate fully in life without being weighed down by philosophical doubts. In contrast, the underground man is crippled by indecision. This creates a sense of self-loathing and frustration, deepening his alienation. His cynicism grows, and his actions, or lack thereof, begin to reflect his internal conflict. He admits to purposefully sabotaging himself, as if proving a point that life is inherently absurd and meaningless. The second part of the novel shifts from internal musings to a series of external events. The underground man recalls a dinner party with old schoolmates, which quickly devolves into a humiliating experience. The underground man who detests these men forces himself into their gathering out of spite and a desire to assert his superiority. Yet the moment he enters the room, he's overcome with awkwardness, anger, and self-consciousness. The dinner party becomes a metaphor for his failed attempt to connect with others. He desperately wants to feel important, but his interactions are filled with passive-aggressive tension. He's ignored, mocked, and eventually, he lashes out at his peers, making a fool of himself. This scene reveals the depths of his social ineptitude and bitterness. His desire to assert dominance over his peers backfires, leaving him even more isolated than before. The dinner party incident highlights one of the novel's central ideas, the inability to escape one's own nature. The underground man wants to belong, but he's incapable of adapting to social norms. His internal chaos spills out into his external world, confirming his belief that he's fundamentally different from others. After the disaster of the dinner party, the underground man visits a brothel where he meets Liza, a young prostitute. Their encounter begins as transactional, but it evolves into something more complex. The underground man sees Liza as someone who, like him, is trapped in a degrading existence. In her, he recognizes the potential for redemption, both for her and possibly for himself. He lectures her on the horrors of her lifestyle, cruelly trying to shame her into recognizing her own despair. However, the underground man's interaction with Liza takes a surprising turn. Despite his harshness, she shows compassion toward him. She visits him in his dismal apartment, hoping to connect on a deeper level. This moment offers a brief possibility of redemption for the underground man. Liza represents a chance for genuine human connection, something he's longed for yet feared. But in typical underground man fashion, he sabotages the situation. Instead of accepting her kindness, he humiliates her, berating her with his bitterness and self-hatred. In the end, he's left alone once again, having destroyed the one chance he had at redemption. The final section of the novel returns to the underground man's internal world. After Liza's departure, he reflects on his actions and the irrevocable damage he's done, not only to her, but also to himself. His self-destructive tendencies have left him trapped in a cycle of loneliness and despair. He acknowledges his cruelty and regrets his inability to connect with others, but at the same time, he refuses to change. He's fully aware of his flaws, but he cannot, or will not, escape them. Dostoevsky uses the underground man to explore the nature of suffering and the human condition. The novel ends not with redemption, but with a continuation of the underground man's misery. He remains trapped in his underground world, a self-imposed prison of bitterness and isolation. He is both the victim and the perpetrator of his suffering. In many ways, Notes from Underground is a precursor to the existentialist movement, presenting a man who's painfully aware of life's absurdity, but unable to find meaning in it. His story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of excessive self-reflection and the inability to engage with the world. And so, the underground man remains, isolated, trapped in his own mind. Notes from Underground is a powerful meditation on alienation, self-destruction, and the human condition. If you found this analysis thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to 8-Minute Masterpieces, and let us know in the comments what literary work you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep diving deep into the world of stories.